who's here. And if you directors can also monitor to see who else is here, we'll just, as we go, I'm going to start announcing, hey, we're live in the chat. We'll see what happens.
Stu, you're at the beach, I see.
You don't want to look out the window in the UK at the moment. Where I am, it's absolutely chucking it down.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought I'd put a nice palm tree beach behind me because the weather is miserable right now.
Well, it's sunny England, right?
Absolutely. But I've got like 11 days till I fly on holiday, so I'm just counting the days down, man.
Where are you going to?
Fuerteventura.
Awesome, awesome. And how did your beloved soccer team do there against Ukraine and everyone there? How did England do?
So we're in the final tomorrow against Italy.
I noticed that. How much wager are you putting down on that?
I'm not a betting man, but I fancy our chances tomorrow.
Awesome, awesome.
I think we've got enough to
come on the Lion.
Jordan is on his way. Hello, Irfan. How are you?
Hi, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I woke up breathing.
Oh, yeah?
Yesterday.
I see.
A good meeting this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who we have with us? Oh, yeah, 9 people.
Well, I mean, we have one. I hate to put Maria on the spot, but maybe she'll be the first person to have questions that she has, or maybe somebody else, even Laurie or Adam. Actually, Adam, while
Yes,
you're
sir.
here, since you're the Canadian program coordinator,
Yes, sir.
I got an email. I'm going to forward it to you. He was a guy from Toronto. And so I connected with a guy that has all the information on Canadian scholarships, how to apply for Canadian scholarships. So if you have your students in Canada, and this student, I'll forward you the email, is asking about Canadian scholarships. And so that's where you and I and Jordan or Mohammed is going to have to meet to see if we can get your Ministry of Education to authorize scholarships.
Awesome.
It shouldn't be an issue. It's just a matter of getting the meeting set with the Ministry of Education. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Canada, we run slow on a lot of things there. So
no, that's fine.
Involved. It's one of the colonies, so it takes time, right?
I know. And so I'll forward you that email so that you're in the loop on that as well. So this basically is an informational virtual open house. Welcome whoever is here. If you can monitor to allow people to enter as I see them, we'll let them in so that they have questions. We can, depending on the program, we'll answer them as quick as possible. And since Irfan is here, he can also brief for Professor Jordan, who I know has his own PowerPoint presentation about his coursework. And so I know Irfan has a program presentation to do. And I also know that Mohammed is out on vacation. So let me let Amos in and we'll wait a few more minutes for people. So Maria, do you have any questions or would you just like to stay silent? Sorry to put you on the spot. Do you have any questions?
Good evening. No. I'm sorry about the video. My internet connection is really bad here.
Okay.
So if I turn on the video, I think it's gonna.
Yes.
I'm gonna lose the connection, but I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you do have questions, you can also just put them in the chat, and we'll see them, and we can answer the questions that way also. That's probably best for some people. And
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming, Maria.
Is Jordan with us yet? I don't think.
Jordan is on his way.
Okay.
On his way to the university, so I think he's gonna present from the university today.
Yeah.
And I got your PowerPoint. You're not going to brief that? You're fine.
That was for Jordan. Yeah, he's
Well-
going to do that. Yeah.
Which one? He has two.
I think it's the same thing, but a little bit updated one. That's for Jordan. He asked me to share it with you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it's the only one.
I think he told me you were going to brief the open house presentation, and he's going to brief his program, the contemporary, I think of the contemporary part of the international security studies, just to give a brief overview of the program.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'll let him.
Yeah.
I'll let him manage his
Yeah.
time and whatever. So
Sure.
who has questions? Amos, do you have any questions? You're welcome to put them in the chat also. If you have any questions, how are you, sir?
I got some questions, Todd.
I'm sure you do, Adam. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have I know some guys here that are currently taking like IT work, et cetera, like that.
Yeah.
And this one gentleman, he's going to be finishing off at a local school in Calgary here. And he did do some interpreting for the U.S. military in Iraq. So he's my roommate there. And he was wondering when he can get some more information on the cybersecurity aspect. I know we're not offering it yet, but he wants to know details of like, is he going to be learning like CompTIA stuff, Security Plus, Net Plus stuff? Or is it going to be just focused on the terrorism aspect for cybersecurity, or what's the game plan for that? So I can have some more background knowledge for when I'm doing my talks with these type of folks here.
So the individual information technology course is basically an 8-week boot camp. It gets them prepared to think about what direction they want to go in cybersecurity, because there is a few pathways that they can go. Even in counterterrorism, if they're criminal justice and they want to do the information technology, the master students may not need it, but there may be some diploma program students that want to take the information technology. If you give me a second, I will.
You said it was 8 weeks there, sorry?
Yeah, the initial boot camp. Just a second, I'm going to bring up the brochure and the coursework that it actually. Okay. So there's somebody else joining. Just a second. Let me get that. So the information technology course is a practical. I mean, it's just an overview. It's for some within classic security studies. Did I open the wrong one? Yes. Sorry, that's Jordan's. Just a second. Let me get the right one. There it is. Okay, so the diploma in information technology, it is some theoretical and practical foundations for the information technology, and it gives a really broad understanding of information management and some productivity tools, but it also has some programming involvement. And so really, for a lot of people, it depends on what country they're from, it gives some, general knowledge of the computer introduction, networking, web-based, database, and then it goes into information management, how data is structured, management tools, and then the cloud computing introduction. And the reason they're doing different introductions is because there's going to be several pathways. One pathway is machine learning, one is AI, one is just basic computing, coding. Coding is, I guess, the key for most places like Apache, Python, stuff like that in the background. And then they'll get into really the productivity tools. You'd be surprised at how many people don't really know Microsoft Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. It's, to be able to do the basics even at a Bachelor of Science level, there's some more advanced stuff you get to do when you're in the master's level program that we would do. Data conversion, and then they do the programming is the last part. So usually these are like 2 weeks, each section, each module that you go through. These are full-time courses for those 8 weeks that you're online.
What's
You're
the cost
live,
on that, sir?
Say again?
What are we going to charge for that? Sorry.
So the boot camp itself, it depends on the country. It really does. And we're trying to scale it based on the level of knowledge that the student has. So the more they need, because even with some of the general knowledge, students still need basic computing skills. And so there is a testing process to start. And if they need it, there's other additional activities they can do. And that's what we're trying to develop within the program itself. Each program is going to have, minimum standards for reading and comprehension. Well, I don't think in Canada you have to worry too much about ESL, but there are requirements in that English is a second language, IELTS testing, and all of them. So, yeah, that covers the diploma in information technology. And the cost is to be determined. It's not a lot because it's an 8-week boot camp compared to the diploma programs, but you do get a diploma in information technology because it meets the standards like a MOS, Microsoft Office certification. You can get MOS, and then there's some other testing that they may end up. Okay.
I recall one of the other members saying that they had tight connections with Microsoft. I'm wondering if we should approach them and see if they'd be interested in designing like a more like an 8-month program or something like that, so that we can get some, like, Microsoft's basically everywhere in the world, right?
They're already doing
it. We're doing that?
They're already doing that. I'm not sure who Mike is that.
I think a lot of the students, it would really help out if they take the diploma through this or whatever, and they get the Microsoft certs, and then we kind of focus more on cool stuff like drones and just the stuff that you don't really learn about in most other schools when it comes to counterterrorism. It open up a lot of doors, and I think it'll sell itself for sure.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So let's keep that conversation for our other meetings.
And then I have another question here regarding, I had somebody ask, like, would you guys be offering any like emergency planning classes or whatever else? Because a lot of companies up here, especially in Calgary, we have a lot of oil and gas companies. They really, they hire a lot of these emergency planning people or stuff like that. So is there any thoughts about us getting into that realm, since it's applicable for counterterrorism, obviously? But it's something that can be transferable to the business world.
All right, just a second. I'm going to mute everybody but the guy that's talking. Sorry. I'm not sure who that is, but you guys, if you're not talking, can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Sounds like somebody's outside with wind or something like that.
Some wind. Must be at the beach.
So to redo that question there, Todd, I had somebody ask regarding emergency planning, like certificate or a diploma, because in Calgary, we have a lot of oil and gas companies and energy companies and stuff like that. And obviously the threat is real up here based on what we have. And a lot of companies do hire people just for that, emergency response, emergency planning, et cetera, like that. And it is applicable for the CT world. And I had a question. Are you guys going to be offering that eventually as a potential diploma?
Yeah, not necessarily in emergency management, but I mean, it is part of first responder if you're doing criminal justice. Even the I would say Laurie Peters James in her medical legal probably goes through. Is that correct, Laurie? You probably go through even in the investigation part that Mohammed's doing. Probably some of that is intertwined within the programs.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Just hang on.
Go ahead.
Yes. some of it is intertwined, definitely, but I have a completely separate course that I work with on that. It's called incident management.
Right.
And it's a full diploma.
Right. And we hadn't, like I said, Adam, we hadn't got that far yet. That's called program development. So, but I understand your questions.
Yeah,
very valid question.
Just another thing, Todd, I think you're going to have to be very careful because, I come from the cybersecurity world. I mean, that's what my company is called, African Cybersecurity. Right. You're going to have to be very, very careful that you don't mix the concept of IT and cybersecurity because they are completely different.
Yes, that's why I said they're basic concepts.
As cybersecurity. Cybersecurity entails two things. Attack, defense. It's SOC and penetration testing. That's where it sits, cyber. So you've got ethical hackers versus SOC.
Sure.
That is cybersecurity. It's got nothing to do with IT. Absolutely nothing.
No, I agree.
Yeah, just I heard Adam ask a question on cyber, and then you spoke about an IT diploma.
Later,
and you
yes.
Be very careful, especially on expectation management, that you don't overlap those two concepts at all, because it's totally different. Yes, you do need an IT background to understand cybersecurity, even to start in the field. But it's a completely separate field. There we deal with internal threat, external threat, attack, defense, red team, black team, hackers versus SOC, and the monitoring. The cybersecurity would be your monitoring side, which is SOC, and that's really where cyber sits. So it's very different. But as far as incident management, yes, your cyber incident management, you would actually do as cyber incident management. So what we do in my company is we design actual incident response plans to a cyber attack. So how to have your press releases basically pre-designed, how to handle it, who's your team, who you're going to call, how you're going to call them, who's on standby. It all needs to be managed in advance so that once you attack, you're not scrambling for a plan. And then, of course, the incident response comes to many things. You've got disaster medicine, which you need to bring in depending on the nature of the disaster. You need your incident response. You need your toxicologists. You need cleanup crews. I mean, if it's mining, you might have a mine shaft collapse. You need geologists. So that's all part of an actual incident response plan that you have to put together, which is quite extensive and doesn't really fall into investigations at all. That would be the investigation related to the incident afterwards.
Right. I'm talking about first responder, first scene security, first scene, first aid, how you respond to initial attacks, things like that. That's what I thought Adam was talking about. And so
things like psychological first aid, triage. Triage, all that kind of thing. Your psychological first aid, getting information out of people. Because remember, you're dealing a lot of the times with dazed, shock people. So how do you focus them, the psychological incident response? How do you focus them to even get information that you need?
Right.
Because they come in and they're not always compos mentis. They're not always functioning. They're dazed, they're shocked, they're cold, they're hypothermic. You don't know, depending on what the situation is. So that's why I said it's very, I think, critical to have a proper incident management program.
That's why I pointed to you, Laurie.
Sorry, I'm waffle.
So what I'm getting at with cyber, so
I've actually got that developed.
The information technology course that, and as a matter of fact, the director's here now, is just a gateway. It's a pathway, and to start a boot camp, to be able to even get to part of the programs that we're doing. We're in the research that we've been doing and the studies we've been finding in different countries, just people don't even have the basics of Excel or anything to be able to do any type of analysis. So
No, I'm with you there, Todd, 100%. But
Yeah.
as I said, just be careful in the marketing that
Oh,
you
no.
don't
Yeah, we're not
overlap the
marketing
two
cyber.
concepts.
Yeah, we're
So
not
that you
marketing cyber. That's separate.
and
Completely different.
cyber
Yeah.
as two very separate
Yes.
issues.
No,
because
I 100% agree. That's why I wanted to. Oh, okay. Hold on. But thank you for explaining that. That was awesome. And hopefully, Adam, that answered your question as to long-term development. Yes, but you asked about the information technology. If someone later wanted to go into cyber, that's fine. But you have to have some basics of programming and language in order to be able to go into certain things, depending on the pathway you take. And that pathway with criminal justice is doing a little bit of research within different databases and stuff like that.
Okay,
You
so I
can't
got
do-
two on the limb that's ready to go, and they already have an IT background. They just want to have something from the
Oh.
States that has our the
But
CT.
without being able to do regression analysis, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot of analysis. But without knowing Excel extensively, you can use other programs and doing studies and things, but you're going to find that you won't be as credible to people without being able to provide quantitative data, which is where this comes in. Qualitative data, anybody can do, a review, a paper, an article, but without quantitative data and it showing how you did it, your control groups, the number of people, your surveys, it's a mute point to try to get into this field. Nobody's going to listen to you unless you understand and can articulate those things within the field. So yeah, IT background's great. A lot of people have them, but the basic boot camp, I'll let Edward, do you have anything to add to that as far as Edward is our, okay, thank you, Edward. And so really, we're just now going through the overall cost of the program, the instructors. I'm teaching some of it, depending on if it's advanced information systems, I'm teaching that as well. Tableau, data visualization, SQL, there's different, structured language that IT people that they need. And there's front-end IT and there's back-end IT. So there's differences within the platforms. Going into criminal justice, being able to look at ArcGIS is a field all in itself to be able to do planning, right? Resource allocation for police departments and stuff like that. Where do officers need to be on specific times? Because they look at patterns over a year's time to see, well, I need to put more officers in the month of this month over here, based on the uptick in data from last year. So there's differences that we can go through within advanced information systems, but you have to have the basics down. And you have to be able to write a research paper in APA or MLA. And so that's where the initial IT coursework comes in, the boot camp. So hopefully that answered your questions. And thank you, Laurie, for your additional remarks.
Thank you.
Mohan,
Thank you.
do you have any other questions, Adam?
No, that's good. Thanks, Todd.
Okay.
Thanks,
Anybody
Laurie.
else have any questions at this point before I move into, I think Mohammed asked to go first. There he is, joining back again. Oh, he has two people joining. Okay. So Mohammed, are you ready to go? I guess there's 1, 2, 3.
Do you have my slide, Todd?
I do, sir. Just a second.
Yeah, can you just share that? Hi, good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Omar. I'm a director of criminal justice with GCTI. Today, I'm just going to present you a diploma in criminal justice with criminal investigation. Next slide, please, Todd. The objectives for this presentation is to discuss about the course, discuss the module overview, discuss the backgrounds of the course leaders, and take any questions from you. Next slide, please, Todd. Okay, so the entry requirement for the diploma in criminal justice, at least to be able, the students are expected to have met their IELTS standard of 5.1, have a knowledge of writing and oral for the English language, because the course itself will be presented and involve a lot of research, as well as the assignments, which I'll go through briefly for each module. At the end of each module, where you'll be required to write an essay of 3,000 words. The teaching and assessment will be, the teaching for the course will be conducted on a weekly basis. Students are expected at least to attend on a weekly basis. It will be provided online recording, and the seminars will be prepared. So set of questions will be arranged. Just getting some background noise. Yeah. So the teaching also, what will happen, students will be presented with lecturer on a weekly basis, at least for 1 hour. But the requirements are 3 hours a week of teaching, and also a set of tasks which you'll be required to look at and do research. The assessment, which I'll go through, the 4 modules, 2 modules per semesters. So the course itself, it is for 8 to 10 weeks, and which is total for 6 course. And at the end of each module, you'll be required to write an essay of 3%. Your attendance is the weighting of 10%, meaning that you're required to attend on a weekly basis, engage online, the forum, and the set tasks that will be assigned to you. And the preparation for the study of this, just the first week on each module, you'll be introduced to the module and the expectations and the requirements for the module. But the course is expected on the first week that you attend an orientation and study skills. This will be to take you through what the requirements in terms of how you conduct your research on the materials that you'll be presented, how you write an essay, and the resources and useful links for you to carry out the research. Next slide, please. So the first module, is criminal law and terrorism, which is, I've mentioned, the orientation on the first week. And the second week, you go through the function of the courts. What you'll be expected to go through is the overview of the function of courts, the comparison between UK and the USA, how the courts functions, and how do they prosecute, how do they the setup of the courts itself, to have an understanding how, for example, the suspects, terrorist suspects, are being prosecuted. What process do they go through? And then the third week, you go through the judicial process. For example, we've seen it in the UK and US. There's a use of jury. How are jury being selected, and what is the functions of the juries, their effectiveness, and their international courts, international criminal justice. And then you go through the elements of crime. The elements of crime, how do people commit crime? What kind of intention, what goes through in their mind in terms of the guilty act and the guilty mind? So you go through the how do the courts, prove, for example, individuals who have mental health, they're not capable, but they commit crime. For example, for a murder, they have diminished responsibility. They ended up going through the courts. If they're proven by the medical experts, they they'll be charged for or prosecuted for manslaughter. And then you go through the offenses against the persons. So we've seen it. Terrorists do not only murder people, but they're also physically assaulting people or stabbing. So we'll go through the different forms of crime. Okay, what is the definition of assault? Okay, what is the whole process? The courts have or the police arrest someone for assault, for murder, or for harassment, different forms of crime. They even GBH, grievous bodily harm. And then we'll look at terrorism and offenses. So there are different laws across the UK and US where the police have given a power in terms of a person, for example, publishing terrorist offenses online. It's an offense. So how do the police have to investigate, and what is the full offense is complete for the police to arrest? In the US Patriot Act, again, there's some offenses over there. When you look at then terrorism financing law, what are the financing law that the police needs to prove when a person commits terrorist financing law, meaning funding or supporting terrorist organization, or there some form of a charity being set up in terms of where people they're using a charity to fund a terrorist organization. Then we look at universal counterterrorism instruments. These are set by the United Nations Security, where the security state members to make sure that there's state members that there are certain rules, laws, and procedures where an individual, certain state commit a terrorist crime in another country, how they ended up extraditing that person and get prosecuted. And then we'll look at some case studies as well, some previous cases where they've happened. One classic example where Richard Reid, the US shoe bomber, where from the UK went all the way to the US on transatlantic airline, and then he tried also to detonate a bomb under his shoes. So what happened then? How does the process works? Then you look at what does international law and terrorism, looking at international law and terrorism, the brief history of international law. And then at the end of this module, there will be an assignment briefing. So the last week where students, you're not going to be left alone just to discuss or no. So the assignment will be you engage with you, discuss with you the requirement for the assignment, and what you're expected to write on the assignment, at least to have an understanding and go out and conduct a research. Next slide, please. So human rights and terrorism, this is where you look at the foundation of human rights. How does the human rights impact on terrorism? The most important, how does the protection of human rights, there are several articles under Human Rights Act 1998, Convention of Human Rights, how the human rights was formulated, and the countries that are supposed to abide these human rights. For example, when a terrorist is holding a gun or shooting several people, for example, London Bridge, what powers do the police have to take the life away of this terrorist? Okay, because every person has a right of life. So you look at all this human rights convention, and what are they, and how, for example, terrorist suspects, are they supposed to be tortured, when they're arrested? Okay, there's a prohibition of torture. So we'll look at, again, human rights violence and impact on human rights and the criminal justice. And then the drones, we've seen the latest technology where the drones are being used, where now look at the situation in Iraq, Somalia, Syria. States have been using drones to attack terrorists. Okay, how does that impact when the civilians are being killed? Okay, should then, this is where international criminal courts, international criminal justice court, what action do they take to those states if they're bound to have breached those human rights in terms of the drones killing innocent civilians? And then at the end of this module, it will be discussed on the assignment brief, a 3,000 words essay. Okay, and it's the referencing to the Harvard referencing style, which at the beginning, the orientation week, you'll be presented. And next slide, please. So the first two modules, human rights and criminal law, you started the first semester. So 2 modules a week, and expected of 3 hours, at least a week, 1.5 hours of a lecture, and some discussion during the week. That will be set with your tutor to discuss in terms of whether there's a seminar or the discussion on a set of tasks that has been set. At the end of those 2 modules, when you've completed the assignments, you have 3 weeks to get the feedback, and you'll be given at least 3 weeks or so, an assignment date which needs to be submitted, a due date. That date has to be there, it needs to be submitted. If there's any failure to submit for whatever reason, I would advise that you get in touch with your tutor to discuss the requirements, how you can weather, based if you have got mitigating circumstances, to extend the due date. But it is important that the assignment is submitted on time, and then it will be marked, and the feedback will be given at least 3 to 4 working weeks. Then, following that, the 2 new modules, the modules of criminal investigation and policing, will start. The first one will be criminal investigation and terrorism. This will look at the history of terrorism briefly, how terrorism started, and briefly. And again, we've had previous seminars on the history of terrorism. So touch base and conduct a comparative study between USA and the UK. And then the evidence procedures, how law enforcement gather evidence in terms of when there's a terrorist incident. What do they need to do to gather evidence to be able to prosecute? Now you've learned the law. So now you investigate the incident and apply that, and then present that evidence to the courts to be able to prosecute the suspect. So you look to different types of evidence, and how do you gather evidence? How do you protect your evidence? How do you secure your evidence? Securing your crime scene is very important. So looking at all those procedures, and also how do the evidence get submitted at court of law in terms of, for example, if you do not, you are conducting a surveillance and it's against the human rights where you have not get an authority and it's against the law, if you submit that to the court of law, that evidence, and you have breached those requirements, that technically the case will be thrown out of court, and then you have lost the case, and then consequently you will end up paying compensation to the suspect. And we've seen, then you will look at a law case studies on the and then students will be given cases to go out and review those cases and research and present it to us. Then you look at the police powers investigating terrorism. What are the police powers in terms of the UK and US? What powers do they have? What powers do they have when they decide to arrest a suspect? What power do they have when they decide they've got insufficient evidence that someone is distributing online materials, propaganda for terrorism? Okay, what evidence do they have when someone has committed a terrorist offense or they're funding terrorist organization? Okay. So looking at different powers, stop and search as well. There's powers in the UK with regards to stop and search. What police power they have to stop a person and search them under Terrorism Act. And also powers to interview a person. How long can you keep a person in custody for? And it's different. There's a different for terrorist offender, different for a normal suspect. So, and the authorities can get an extension, and up to how many hours the person can get an extension to continue to interview the suspect and gather evidence. And then investigative interview framework. We look at a different definition of interrogation and interviewing. Interrogation and how historical these changes were. In the past, police used to use interrogation, and now they've changed. We look at the read technique as well, looking at the miscarriage of justice. There's a famous case in the UK, such as Birmingham 6 and Guildford 4, where the suspect have been arrested, accused of terrorist offenses, but they've not done, and consequently they were released, and the government ended up. There's also previous cases where a child, again, it's a breach of looking at the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 in the UK, and again looking at the US as well. Compare the process as well. How do the police interview? And then confession. How do the police obtain confession from a person who's there's a difference where if a person confesses falsely confession, what is the false confession? How do people make false confession? So there's a different interview investigative framework that we'll discuss, and how to be able, there's a model of interviewing as well. We call it PIS model, where how do you if you're working in a criminal justice, how do you plan and prepare your now you've arrested the suspect, you've got the evidence, you're ready now to question the person, and you wanted to prosecute this person, put him before the court. So how do you plan your interview based on the evidence you get, so you can get a person to confess? Okay, so then there's a technique that will look at how which you'll be able to see. It's a PIS model that you can do, and then we'll look at the forensic science. We'll look at the specialist investigation techniques. This is surveillance, covert surveillance. How do surveillance being carried out, or look at what legislation, what powers do the police have in terms of carrying out this surveillance, and then forensic science, and look at forensic science and terrorism, which is again looking at types of different forensic science, because when there's a bombing on explosion or vehicle improvised device and everything, there is a lot involved that investigators, and it's they need to go to that level where what do the police gather that evidence. And then we'll look at terrorism and the media, because we've seen in the past the aim of the terrorist is to get mass media, all right, and to cause fear, all right. They use the media. We've seen this. So how do terrorists use social media? How do they use the media? What did they use before that? Okay, why do they like to use the media? And also the same, the police also use the media as well. And the media, sometimes they can influence how the police is carrying out investigation. And there's been many case studies which we'll look at. And offender profiling will look how do law enforcement gather the information on offenders, all right? So when they think, okay, how do they say this person is a terrorist? How does this person is a suspect? What do we need to do? Okay, and there's a different techniques which will go through how is the process to get the offender profile. And for example, the classic example now, one example is it's been mentioned, incident management. And incident management is a good organization now. They have what's called security operations centers, where they use GIS. GIS is to gather globally what's happening around the world with all the incidents, that they can tell the employees to make a decision that if we have employees working in Somalia and there's an explosion, do we need to send our employee there? That is all gathering of information. And then we look at the psychology of terrorism. At the end of that, again, there will be an assignment which you need to complete. It's an essay, again, 3,000 words. Okay, the next one, please. So the last is policing and terrorism, which is, we'll look at foundation of modern policing. And then we'll look at the community policing, how policing is very important. And it's not about telling what people to do. It's also about how do you police the community and to get trust with the community and confidence? Because if you work with the community well, you rely on them to give you intelligence. Consequently, that you'll be able to target the potential criminals out there. So how do you build up that good relationship and good examples how community have helped the police in the past? And then a lot of different strategies that the police are used within. One good example is if you work very well with the mosque and or the Asian community, engage with them, build trust with them. There's been some example where we can use, and the UK has happened, where individuals who have been seeing that now they're getting themselves into terrorism, and before they commit the act of terrorism, the police have been able to get information from community to be able to stop that act because they build that trust and good relationship. So we'll look at different strategy, different examples. And then itself, how do the police policing terrorism? And what strategy do they have? Good example is they have the threat levels, okay? There are different threat levels around the world, okay? From high to low, medium. And in other countries, you have green, yellow, and red.
Don't
which
call it a
mean red.
kaftan then. Say something else.
Okay. So you have a look at different strategy as well, such as in the UK, you have a contest strategy, which is one is to pursue terrorist offenders. How do the police and law enforcement and all those people working criminal justice use that to pursue terrorist offenders, and also link up with the legislation as well they have. Then we'll look at policing serious organized crime. Is there a link between serious organized crime and terrorism? Because how do terrorism funding themselves? Through illicit trade, and illicit trade also serious organized crime, okay? And it goes transnational. How do the police law enforcement able to police this and be able to curb this organized crime and also consequently stop the act of terrorism? And then we'll look hate crime and terrorism, where hate crime and terrorism, is there a link, meaning that somebody's being victimized or being discriminated and everything? Could they consequently turn against the community that they not like? I mean, we've seen for a good case study we have here, for example, the white supremacists, where they were not against Brexit, and then one of MP was killed, all right, because someone decided to join. So that's the hate. How did this person build up such hate? We look also intelligence-led and policing. How do the police gather intelligence and then policing that to get to intelligence-led and to gather evidence and led to the subsequently share the information? And there are different organizations worldwide, from Interpol, NCA. How do they share information? Okay, and then policing cybercrime, which is not teaching you how to, but looking at some case studies in terms of the rise of cybercrime and the challenges of combating this cybercrime, and what strategy do the police have in terms of reducing the act of cybercrime. And then evidence-based policing. Evidence-based policing is very good because it's a good case scenario where, for an example, a good example, in America, New York, many years ago, they have high knife crime. However, they were able to put zero tolerance policing and reduce that. But consequently, will that work in London? You know, now where you've got the knife crime, knife stabbing is the highest in Europe. Okay, so again, how do law enforcement use evidence-based policing in different scenarios to be able to reduce those acts of crime and build the trust and confidence within the community? Then you look at, lastly, what do you see the future of policing? And for example, you see all these challenges, the drones, organized crime, the human rights. all these issues now they're coming up. The COVID-19 as well, it's the challenges. As you said, the rise of use of technology as well. People are getting more and more radicalized. And again, what are the challenges? And at the end, you'll be given an assignment, 3,000 words, an essay to complete. And based on the requirements I've mentioned earlier, this will be discussed and what expectations from this. And a question you'll be given from the whole subject material just to cover within the essay. Next, please. So as I've mentioned, I'm a program leader for the Diploma in Criminal Justice with the investigation. I'll be taking the module oversee this program. And my background, as I've mentioned before, I spent about a decade within the UK police. Also, I have a bachelor in policing and investigation and policing studies. I've also got a master's in business administration. I've also spent a decade in Africa working for a large security organization after finishing police. Spent in setting up training department, criminal investigation department, and even investigation, complex investigation across Africa. Also experience in level 5 crisis management, certified anti-terrorism specialist. And I'm not going to go through part of my other qualifications, but over the years I've attended several. I'm also bilingual in Swahili. Again, I'm happy to share the profile. I'm available on LinkedIn as well. You can reach out to me. Next, please. So my colleague, Mrs. Amber Quindo, most of you know, she's a research fellow and also a country coordinator director. Coordinators are across the world and the GCTI. And she'll be taking also some of the modules, especially she's specializing in terrorism and media. She's also done research in radicalization and propaganda. She's got Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, Master of Science in Homeland Security Management, Terrorism, and she's attained FEMA certification in critical infrastructure and other courses as well. So she will be also working with me in terms of to provide you this learning journey, and I hope it is a very interesting and it's an honor for me to be teaching this module because I'm qualified in this field, and again got Amber who's also qualified. So I'll look forward to meet you and engage with you and support you throughout. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you, Todd.
I got a question,
Any
Mohammed. Can you go over the timelines? You said it was 1.5 hours every week, right? Or could you give me those timelines again?
Right. So you'll be 2 modules a week that you will have to complete. Because the course itself is 6 months, we don't want to extend it to 9 or a year. So it's 2 modules. And what's good about this, which I'm gonna share that with you, if you're able to complete the full course, you'll be able to get credit go towards either master's or I believe it's a forensic science, a diploma, which is an advanced level. So you need at least for each module 3 hours. So I think combined of 6 hours a week. 1.5 hours at least of lecturer, which you can go online. The presentations are already there online for you to listen, go through. A set of tasks you'll be given. A set of tasks, it may be to do a research on a case study, questions you'll be given, or write up about something, or it'll be a presentation that you may have to do. So it will be 1.5 hours a presentation, and 1.5 hour a set of study, a set of tasks that's been set for you by your tutor to do it. So 10% of your assignment is through your engagement, attending online, and also engaging with those set tasks that you've been given. This will be monitored. So to get a full 100% grades on your module, you need to make sure that 10% is through your attendance online. Okay, you through engaging, and the rest 90% goes towards how you've done well on your essay. Okay.
Okay, and how much homework are they expecting per?
Adam, is it clear now?
Yeah, it's clear. Yes, sir. And then how much like extra homework are you guys going to be assigning for that? Just so I can give like an hourly base, so that say they're working on the papers, everything like that. How much? How many hours are you guys expecting out of that? On top of that.
So for example, if we're gonna be looking at criminal law, let's say we've been discussing some international law case study. You have at least 4 or 5 questions within that, and this task are set for you is not only for understanding you and to prepare you towards your assignment and building you up for your research skills, okay? Because what happens is, if you are going to study to attain a master qualification or advanced diploma, you'll be expected to have build up a good level of understanding, a good level of research skills. And because for the masters or advanced, at least you'll be expected to do a research project, okay? So that will be building, also be building up for your understanding for your assignment. So some weeks you'll be given 3, some weeks you'll be given 4, some weeks it could be 2 set of tasks. So it may be, for example, if you're going to be discussing, let's say, international law, on criminal law, go have a look at a case study where a country that where they've had an individual who went to another country and committed an act of terrorism, but there have been challenges for that person to be extradited. What legislation and why was that person not extradited? So you go out and do a research and come back with some feedback, and you understand what have you found. So not necessarily you're expected to write a paper, just maybe 400 or 500 words online, you just to say, okay, this is what I found, this is with some referencing as well. So, and a discussion for all of you there. And again, that's to build up. And also it's a very good way of building up a research interest for specific individuals as well. Looking of the building you up on your strength. And if you have a certain weaknesses, then you'll be built up on that to have a level of understanding, because you'll be able to see what other individuals have contributed to that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Adam, I would surmise that at most diploma levels, you're going to get maybe 8 to 10 hours of homework, where you have reading assignments and you have other research you're going to have to do. And I think, is that the answer you were looking for as a number per week?
Yeah, just to get a rough ballpark there, because I know that to be in class and stuff like that. And then obviously some of the potential students I'm talking to in Canada here, they do have full-time jobs, everything like that. So I just want to give them kind of a ballpark figure of what to expect. And obviously they want to do well. And it's good to know that kind of stuff when I'm chatting with them, because it's always a question that I get asked, right?
So this is why our program is a little different, that we've structured it to where you may meet once a week with lecture or twice a week with a homework assignment for an hour and a half. And we want to make sure that we follow the guidelines that the higher education standards set with seat time. So there's an amount of seat time that's required if this is an accredited class eventually, that we'll have to maintain a minimum time frame for these students. Like at a master's level, you're going to be expected to do probably 20 to 30 hours of research work a week and write more papers, write articles. And so, there are some skills that we may have to teach, meaning study skills, the correct citation, how to cite something correctly. there may be some things at the diploma level that the students might need, and there's some extra assignments that we're going to be helping with on how to do that. So it's almost the same as, you know, doing the information technology class. You got to be able to effectively write an essay, and maybe not at the diploma level write like a master's student, but we want that skill to be there, so that if you do advance to the next course, if you want to do the forensics or profiling course, advanced level in criminal justice, then you're confident to be able to do that. That's the same with presenting. If you have to do a discussion, we're here to help to build the confidence in that, not just the technical aspect, but you know, there's tactical and there's technical. Tactical just means you're able to do the work. Technical means you understand what it is you're doing within the work. And so those technical abilities also come along with this coursework, not just here's a bunch of information we're going to give to you. We want you to be whole, tactical and technical in your abilities in this field. So, and as far as the time limit, it is 2 terms, which a term is usually about 10 to 12 weeks each term, this semester. And so with 8 to 10 weeks, you know, you're going to have 8 weeks of lecture, you're going to have a week of orientation and a week of final exam or written exam. In this case, there's written practical exercises each term. So we want to fill in, we don't want to do busy work. We want to make sure that you're, like I said, technically proficient also. Hopefully that answered your question. And Mo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Todd. I think one thing I would like to say, just to reassure the potential students, that you don't have to worry, because the course is online and you'll be able to engage and ask as many questions. And you'll be also on each module, and at the end of each presentation, you have an idea where to go and find the materials.
Absolutely.
So you have already an idea, and a lot of sources will be provided for you. And also, pre-reading materials be provided for you. So this will be available for you to go online and be able to say, okay, I want to read this, I can read this. So on a weekly basis, you're going to have materials to read. And it's also, it's not just about attending online, listening to the presentation, but what have you learned from there? Because also this will be building you up on a weekly basis and towards your assignment. So it's for you to be able to pass your assignment, you're going to be able to do those tasks. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to pass, because you'll not be able to have any evidence. So these are what the tutors will be doing is giving you case studies, and then you go look for those case studies, and those case studies, they may be useful for you to write for your assignment.
Yep.
And referencing. So that is the hint you're getting. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Omar?
I got one more there. I'm sorry, but is there any differences between you doing the UK-US comparison? You brought that up there. Is there any differences? I don't know the answer to this, but between, like, say, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and UK, or are we all pretty much the same for the courts and all that kind of stuff?
Right, it's pretty the same, but the reason why we bring in some case studies from UK and US, because when you look the number of terrorist incidents that have happened, however, there are, for example, one of the tasks will be, if we're going to be talking about terrorism offenses and law, so students will be asked, go and research what are the terrorism offenses in your country, what are the terrorism law, to be able to build up, and then come back and whether there have been any terrorism incidents and what do the police have used it. So it's also just to open up, because, for example, if you're going to talk about the how do you policing terrorism, what are the counter-terrorism strategy your country has. We know UK, US, Australia, Canada has, but go out and look for, are there any counter-terrorism strategies that your country has? And we know some countries don't like to share that information or don't have it, but this will open up a thinking skill that, why my country hasn't got counter-terrorism strategy or hasn't shared that with us? Is there a reason? Is there a problem? There, for example, when you look at international law, there are countries, there are member states of UN Security Council, all right? Some are not. And what happened? and then look at some previous, how would they be able to extradite if a person committed a terrorist offense from another country? Now, this is where the challenge is coming. So this is all creating a critical thinking and research skills, okay? And also for future research, where why do we have these things? Why this is the gap for future research and building up a student interest in this area, okay? So the reason that we picked up, because we'll still be able to look at some other cases around the world, but there's not much difference. I'll say Canada, and we look at Australia, there's not much difference in terms of the strategy and the legislation. However, because of the number of incidents correlates and the law enforcement, when you look at the criminal justice, there's a differences as well in a historical in terms of UK and US. So when you start looking at, for example, when the police and criminal evidence was introduced in the UK, in the US, they were a little bit behind, and then they came back with a different terminology as well. And again, you look at why do they have? How do they? I mean, look at use of forces. When you look at now, you understand the specific. You look at US Patriotic Act. When you look at various legislations in the UK, you're gonna see why US have got one big legislations, and UK have broken down a different, and they're making it a little bit meaningful. And this is why you'll be able now to compare. And then you can say, okay, go and have a look at your own country, because there's not many people that are able to go out there and look at that research. So this is why we're giving you this critical thinking and go out and look for more information. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Adam, just to add to that, what's quite interesting when you look at the UK versus the US laws, and then you'll find that most countries, especially most African countries, also draw certain parts of their legislation from UK law and certain parts of their legislation from US law. So, for example, if you look at the just for example, Botswana, South African law, both of them, they draw their criminal procedure more from UK law, and their evidence more from US law. For example, South Africa does not have a jury system at all. So it's a judge, and that's UK procedure. You'll find that a lot of the UK, they don't have it. In the UK, there's no jury system, I don't think. Whereas so your procedural law is usually drawn from UK and Africa. So it's very important to be able to look at where and how the systems are drawn from, and also where they fall in the international law. And without that, you end up a little bit wavering in trying to apply, especially the criminal procedure, which is all your evidence-based techniques, your warrants, your actual court procedures, the way that it falls. So that's where that whole thing becomes very tricky if you're not aware of both systems.
Yeah, and thanks, Laurie. What's another thing is good with the criminal law? It's bring you to the first introduction. How do these laws are being made? How? And the process, when you look at it, is different within the UK and US. And another thing is, just to add what Laurie has said, the most countries that are British colony or US colony, they use the same law that they have. For example, UK, they have a common law. And the common law, you still have a murder. It's a common law in the UK. In most of African countries that they are British colony, they have that common law until today. All right. So that's another reason as well, looking at this comparative, but study and look at some between UK and US. Yeah.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is you can also often look at where that country is in the development of law and where it's going. So just to give you an idea of that, 10 years ago, I moved to Botswana. Now, despite Botswana's law, it's all statutory. There's no common law in Botswana at all, which is quite interesting. So everything is statutory, but the problem is the statutory law was written in the 1960s when it became independent, and it's never been updated. So they had massive problems with things like cybercrime because they had not yet written even the crime of fraud into the legislation yet, and they still haven't. But they are making adjustments in trying to compensate for that with extra acts, like the money laundering acts and things like that. So they try to work in the new law. But if you look at the Botswana law, criminal act itself, the crime of theft only pertains to movable corporeal property. They haven't even extended that to the incorporeal yet. So in actual fact, the entire credit system and the entire banking system is under threat. Now, when you have that and you don't have the incorporeal protected, then it opens up your money laundering problems. It opens up your terrorist financing problems. There's also no exchange control there at all. There's nothing. So that would then open up more doors to terrorist financing as well. A lot of the systems that operate there are just non-functional. So you can also look as to where they're going to develop the law and how to hold their hands to do that, by taking the UK structures and taking the American structures and seeing how you can merge it into assisting the individual countries to develop their law to enable them to protect themselves. And a lot of them aren't there yet. And that's where somebody like Global Counterterror can actually hold their hands to assist them in the development phase. Yeah.
Thank you, Laurie. That was a
Yeah,
perfect pitch for GCTI.
Yeah, absolutely, Laurie, because you still have, and what's interesting about the program itself, it is not only someone who's finished high school, or also law enforcement officers in other parts of the world. Because, for example, you look what the problems are built up in Nigeria over SARS, all right? And because excessive use of force, breach of human rights, the community, again, we're talking community policing here, the community reacted because they lost the trust and confidence on the system, and they've taken the matters on their own hands. And that is what's a class example, because in this day and age, the human rights, again, the police breaching human rights, using excessive force, the right of life, and then look at these case studies. So the police training as well out there around the world, they may be lacking some sort of knowledge or understanding. So this is only also someone who's a police officer, someone want to get into the law enforcement, they can learn these things and be able also work in criminal justice, probation, or a court administrator, or their interest on this subject area. They'll be able to do this course. And even policy developer, they maybe wants to have a look at some areas, the gaps, to develop some policies, some law and everything, thinking, okay, where's the gap, where's the area where in my country where I can help, and conduct some research and advice, governments within some governments departmental, and advise them how they can maybe introduce some counter-terrorist financing laws, etc. So that's what the interest, and again, you also be able to develop for those who want to go and get a master's or have a degree in criminal justice. Again, they'll be able to go to higher education. So that's what the interest about the course. Okay.
Yeah, and it will also just teach them to benchmark their own systems against multiple international developed systems. And then, as I said, develop stronger systems for themselves. And I think that, especially if you're pitching to the African type countries, the countries that are a little bit not developed, war-torn countries, most of them could really use the assistance and the understanding of how and where they're going.
I understand, Laurie, because what's happened now, if you, let's say today you take this program, you go to one country, you go to the law enforcement, you say to them, I'm going to come, I'm going to teach you this. They're going to say, I think you're going to teach us, you know enough. However, and maybe they think that it's going to cost them a lot of money, but there may be individuals there because I know USA, UK, the police, they've trained up police in other developing countries. But what's happened, the police, they come in from other developing countries, they're trained and everything. What happened when the same problems continue? Is it the leadership or is that the messages not sent out? But there may be some individuals, maybe maybe they haven't got time to learn from their senior bosses in that specific, those countries. Again, they may be able to say, okay, there's a course very reasonable, and maybe I can be able to go and join and educate myself and also make some changes and also climb up the ladder. And that's what the course is about.
Yeah, the other interesting problem that we see today is a lot of people are taking their education from the TV programs where they get US TV programs, and then they just automatically assume that the US system will apply in their country. And they don't realize that there are multiple systems and that their country is probably not using the US system. And, you've got a lot of armchair forensic experts these days that are actually pretty dangerous to themselves and the community in a lot of cases. But there's also a lot of armchair lawyers. And as I said, they're getting their information from American TV. And it really doesn't apply. And it's very, like we had a whole bunch of kids that wanted to be CSIs, but they don't realize that there are various fields in forensics and that you can't just be a jack of all trades sort of, or master of all trades, because you don't work on scene and with ballistics and with DNA and with that, it's just that it doesn't happen. You don't work with everything. You have to pick a field. And it becomes very confusing for when you work in the actual field to try and explain to these kids that what they've seen on TV really isn't what's happening on the ground, and just giving them the fact that their legal system, Saudi's legal system, America's legal system, UK legal system is completely different. The departure points are completely
absolutely.
See, I think we have some questions. Okay, that's
yeah.
Very correct. Hey, thank you guys. We're getting into the second hour of, let's see, Irfan or Stuart. You guys can flip for who goes next. Mohammed, thank you very much. I'm gonna thanks everyone. Like I said, reach out to me on or Amber, or anyone just in the team. Just I'm sorry, but I have to go. Okay.
But again, I'm available anytime. Just let me know. All right.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good
Counterterrorism techniques applied by state.
And I look forward to speaking.
Yes, I see counterterrorism techniques are the response, and the techniques are applied depending on the location. Some are more hypervigilant in their responses than other are. Third world countries, I mean, you even have infighting around the terrorism that's happening in many countries right now. And people are just fighting for control of power of the country and using terrorism as that. So, and I think with that, thank you, Mohammed. I know you have to go. Enjoy your vacation, and I'm sure your partner is also enjoying the vacation. And thank you for that presentation.
Excellent.
So Adam or Irfan and Stuart, it's up to you two who wants to go next.
Is Jordan here by any ways?
You know, he was on his way to the university. He was supposed to be there by now, and I'm not sure where he is.
Let's see. Because he said that he's going to present the presentation, so I'm not sure if he comes and he present the same thing.
Yeah.
I will have to coordinate with him. If he's getting late, then I can go and present the presentation.
So that means
Or I'll text him in person.
so Stuart gets to go next.
Yeah.
Okay, Stuart, the floor is yours.
All righty. Can people see that?
Yes.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ana ismi Stu wa ana min Ingilterra. Hello. Hello everyone. Peace and blessings upon you. My name is Stu and I'm from England. And I will be taking the Beginner's Arabic Diploma course with the GCTI. It's a very short presentation, just to give you a little bit of what the course entails. Just a bit about me, what qualifies me to be able to do this as a non-native. Well, firstly, being native of a country doesn't make you a good teacher. I've had that first-hand experience of trying that. Secondly, I hold a first-class degree in Middle Eastern Studies and Arabic. I've studied the language for 4 years. I've also lived in the Middle East in Arabic-speaking countries, in Qatar, Iraq, and Oman. The course is based on Modern Standard Arabic, which is known as the Fusha. I don't feel I'm qualified to teach dialects because I'm not native. However, all the literature that is written in the Middle East, Arabic-speaking countries, is written in Fusha, and it is sort of the spoken language across the Middle Eastern bloc. For example, if an Iraqi wants to speak to an Egyptian, they're completely two different dialects, so they can revert to the Fusha, the Modern Standard Arabic, to communicate. So this is the language that I'll be teaching. The aim is to provide a foundation of beginner's Arabic. We're going to start right at the basics and the building blocks of the Arabic alphabet, and hopefully equip students with the self-study skills and knowledge to further or take it further after the course. Now, this is the breakdown. So, as I said, we're going to start right at the Arabic alphabet. We're going to look at all 4 skills of language learning: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We're going to start with the alphabet. It is the building blocks. You cannot functionally write without understanding the alphabet. It writes from right to left. It has different word forms or letter forms depending on where the letters fit within the words. And there are many grammar rules that are different to English, as we know. It is a gendered language as well, so we will talk about gender. The voweling system's vastly different to English. So we're going to break all this down week by week. So these are the weeks actually there. So after the introduction, which is week 1, and sort of the getting to know the institute, we'll go straight in with the Arabic part 1 and part 2 over the first 2 weeks. And then we'll start to connect the letters and see how they connect from the left and the right. There are some naughty letters within the 28-letter alphabet that don't connect from the left and right. We go through all of this. And as I just said as well, what qualifies me to be a good teacher of this is because I've made all the mistakes as a foreign language learner of the language. So I've structured this course in a way that I've tried to take care of all of these pitfalls and traps that language learners can fall into as non-natives. I've broke it down really nice. It's written out really nice. I've color coded a lot of it, and I've done transliteration romanized as well. So although you can read the Arabic right to left, I've also written the transliteration in Romanized letters and then the meaning underneath as well in a lot of the studies that people will do if they undertake this course. Module 2, then we start getting into more speaking, how to introduce ourselves, how to talk about ourselves, and how to ask basic questions in the target language, such as, where are you from? I'm from here. Where is the bank? You know, very, very useful, phrases and greetings that are spoken regularly and that people will use if they go to or come into contact with anyone from the Arabic speaking world. It's a very religious language as well, so you'll hear a lot of Allah within the language. I go through all of this as well, and even though if you're not a native or you're not Muslim, it's still really nice to use terms such as Assalamu alaikum and things like this. So we go through all this, and it's a really nice course that I've put together, I think. So yeah, there's no pre-Arabic language requisites. As I've said, we're starting from the alphabet, so there's nothing you need to know before that. Although you do need to have a language proficiency of 6.5 to understand the course. So there's about 45 hours of study. There's also a 1,500 word essay due for the course as well, which comes in semester 2, which I'll speak about more in a second. There's a grammar assessment. It's very, as I said, it's a beginner's course. The Arabic alphabet alone takes a lot of study to get into your head to be able to recognize the letters in the different formations. So the grammar assessment will be based around forming words, connecting the letters and such like. Then we'll have a comprehension. So as I said, we do all 4 skills of language learning: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So there will be a reading aspect of the assessment as well. So there'll be a short script, a paragraph about somebody talking about themselves. And then there'll be questions in English to answer about the script that's written in Arabic. So it's a comprehension test, basically. And then finally, there's a cultural assignment. The student can pick the topic. It could be Arabic folklore, such as 1001 Arabian Nights. If you've heard of that before, it's a wonderful story, as it's known in Arabic, Alf Layla wa Layla, or Juha and his donkey, you know, Arabic coffee, anything to do with the Arabic culture, Arab life. You know, he could talk about a souk, like a souk al-Hamadiyya in Suria. So anything around the culture. And it's a 1,500 word essay to be written with a 10% word count up or down on that. It should be an academic written essay too. Yeah, and hopefully at the end of it, they will have a basic understanding, be able to read and write and speak and listen in the target language at a basic level. As I've wrote there, I don't need to go through what it says, but how to ask and answer basic questions, how to write basic sentences as well. There will be up to 3 hours of student led hours with me on week by week. So I'll be available for students to speak to me, connect with me, ask me any questions that they may have during the course. But all of the course content is pre-recorded, so students have the accessibility to continue or rewatch it, you know, if they're struggling with any part of it. But as I said, up to 3 hours a week, I'll be there for any questions to go through anything with the course content. And that is about it for this course. It's a wonderful course, although I'm being very biased when I say that. It's well structured, and I feel like it will really benefit people that come on it, because you know, in this day and age, with globalization, the world is very small. Whether you work within counterterrorism or in any other field, whether it be gas and power, finance, you know, the Arabic speaking world is massive in these industries. You know, so it's well worth knowing something to be able to communicate with this part of the world. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
And thank you, Stuart. I appreciate it. That was,
Excellent, Stu.
very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I almost probably think I will sign up for the course myself.
Same here. I would also like to join, Stu.
Mashallah, shukran. Habib.
Inshallah, yes.
Yeah.
Mashallah, shukran, shukran.
All right. So next, I don't
So
see.
it seems Jordan is not here and he might be stuck in some, I don't know where. So maybe I can just go, and present
Yes.
briefly what our course is about.
All righty. So I can bring up the presentation if you want.
The presentation, yeah, I could do that. Thank you.
There you go. You can see that, correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Irfan Yar, the floor is yours, and I'll let you work out with Jordan later.
Okay, thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
first of all, if there is some background noise or some disturbance, I apologize since I'm not in my place and I don't have laptop with me. So excuse me for that if there's an issue. So we have a diploma in international security, which is a totally a different, program from our master program in international security. And this course, the students, will be introduced to the main theories and approaches, of security studies. As you all might know that, international security or the concept of security studies is very vast and umbrella term. And before World War II, it was all about, the hard war or the traditional military approach of security. But with the new security concept, especially by the Copenhagen School of Baribuzan and its colleague, they introduced a new concept of security, which totally revolutionized this concept. They did not include only the traditional security aspect of security, but also like climate changes and all other issues which but indirectly or directly can influence human security. So we will be teaching students what are the traditional approaches of security and what are the new concept or the widener approach, as they call it, of security studies. Beside this, we will also talk about how this concept evolved through this 2 decades, which is the most important time because of the globalization, climate change, and the economic development that is taking all over the world. So these will be some of the key concepts that we will be teaching. Beside that, what we will be talking about terrorism, which of course is a key topic of international security. We will talk about the cyber security. We will also equip students to conduct basic research skill throughout this course. So Todd, if you could come down to the third slide. Yeah. So our course outline are the modules that we will be teaching. The main topics that we choose would be, critical security studies. We will, tell the student how you see security from your perspective. As I mentioned, there are 2 concepts of security. One is, security and theory, and the other one is security and practice. Students will be familiar with both of these approaches, that how scholars define or see security and how the practitioner sees security. And then based on their knowledge, how the student themselves, perceive a different aspect of security. We will also talk about, wars, both in the past and also in the new world, which approaches are state taking to conduct or wage those wars. Of course, the use of technology is always important when it comes to security, this is not only used by the state but also by non-state actors. Day by day, terrorists, are including more and more technology to their guerrilla or terrorist activities. So understanding technology would be a crucial part of this course. And of course, energy and resource security. As I mentioned, security is not always about the war. It is about the food. It is about the energy. It is about the climate. It is about the social aspect. So all these things will be tackled. But the most important thing that we will study in this course are the energy and resource, which can affect human security. Uh, Beside those things, we will be also talking about, armed trade, how different countries, provide arms to different countries and where those countries are using those arms. For example, when there was, and it affects, international relation and the security studies. When there was, conflict between Palestinian and Gaza in the recent days, Turkey, sent some of the weapon which was, sent by Canada or sold by Canada to Turkey, and they used in Gaza. So what the Canada did, they banned and put more restriction on selling weapon to Turkey. So all these things can, influence relationship between the states, and there will be much regulation. So, trading in arms will be also, a key part of this course, and how it affects international relation and international security studies. Uh, we talked about, the power of recognitional and international security. We always say that, scholar may see security, from a different lens, but when it comes to politicians and practitioners, they always see security from a different lens. You might have heard about the word securitization, so they can, take anything as an excuse to wage war, and they will link that thing to, as a survival of their national security. And one of the key example of this is the 9/11 attack, when President George W. Bush, securitized the 9/11 attack, and based on that securitization act, they took the legitimacy of that war and went to Afghanistan, to dislodge the Taliban government. And what did the Taliban did? They also, pushed a counter securitization, argument. They said that for us, it's our religion, which is the most important, aspect of our life. They securitized religion, and then they, pushed a counter attack against the U.S. So it's all about, what thing you see most important, be it national security for some state or groups, it's religion for some states, it's culture. So they can technically, securitize any aspect of, life, and based on that, they can, take legitimacy to wage war, or go, to extreme limits. And we will be, teaching students the role of practitioner and international security. And of course, cyber war and cyber security will be, also the key aspect of this course. Could you please come down to the next slide, Todd? Yeah, and as like my other colleagues, this is really simple assessment. There will be no written exam in this diploma course. There will be no practical exam in this diploma course. Most of the course, it's the course work. If it is completed by a student, he will receive the full marks, and depending on his or her quality of work, they will be graded. And additionally, we might also ask a literature review of 1,500, or so, which will be reflecting their research skill. We might ask them to write an abstract beside the literature review. They will also be taught how to choose a good research question, abstract, and literature review. And of course, a essay, which of course not will be an original work, but a kind of reflection of original work in a diploma, or in a junior level. So these will be some of the research skills that that students will be equipped with in this course. And the duration of this diploma course will be around like 4 weeks. There may be some extra 2 weeks for writing their, literature review or essay, and that will be the end of the course. Can you come down, Todd, please? So yeah, the leader of this course is Professor Kunli Alumi Jordan, as you might know him. He is an extremely experienced person in international security studies. He, as you can see, has degrees in international relation, PhD. He was also a member of the Harvard University. He did his senior executive program in the national security studies. He also, taught in many other colleges in Nigeria, and of course, he did his master's from France in international securities. So all his life, he was, involved in security studies, military, strategies. So I think he's the most, suitable person to teach this course. And myself, I will be assisting him as a teaching assistant and, providing him help in this course. So this is all for today. And if you have any question, I'll try to answer them.
I don't have a question here, Irfan, but I have a comment here. Like, I can probably get you into some talks here for the Canadian oil and gas community in Calgary.
Okay.
I think it'd be highly advantageous because you brought up different security things going on, and President Biden just put out a directive that we have to secure all grids after that pipeline got hacked down in the States.
Oh, yeah.
Since
exactly.
we're on the same grid as the States, especially Canada, our power grids and our fuel, everything like that is all intertwined very much. I think it'd be great promotion for the GCTI logo and just having us get out there a little bit more within our community. The vast majority of the people I'm going to be enrolling will be from around the Calgary area for the start here, right? And for us chatting, you'll probably get some of these oil companies, et cetera, there to look at some of our graduates for potential employment and just getting our name out there. So I might set that up if you're interested.
Yeah, sure. That sounds amazing. At least we will, get introduced to each other, see what their works area are and where we can potentially, play a role. And maybe if there is a huge demand, we can eventually, if possible, introduce a course which might meet, their expectation, and potentially some of our students can be hired there. And it is, something related to, as I said, security, because protecting the infrastructure can, have a very, high, like a direct impact on the lives of millions of people. And we can link this kind of projects to our course, easily. So I will be happy to, with your help, get introduced to them.
Excellent. Yeah, I know some people that are going to make some calls here probably next week or whatever, and then we'll be chatting. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Let me know. Definitely.
Thank you.
Oh.
So thank you very much, Irfan. And as I understand, Professor Jordan has just joined us.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I thought if you would like me to, talk about some potential opportunities for the students for this, so that they might be able, to intern with my, with my the initiative that I have taken on the Afghanistan Security Institute.
Yes.
Or maybe we can talk about it next time. I don't know if you allow me. I can talk now.
Sure, we can talk about that actually on the next time. We're trying to get this recording.
Sounds good. Yeah, sure.
The open house for the student for the programs. I'm talking to Jordan.
Irfan, I'm really interested to hear about that as well. If you could share some info, that would be great.
About the institute that I'm talking about?
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
The ASI? Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you, Todd, and thank you, Laura. So this is, basically I'm still in the process of developing it. It's a think tank which exclusively will be focusing on Afghanistan and its relation with the US mainly on security issues. And when we talk about Afghanistan, it involves, of course, Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, are all those actors, which play a crucial role in the security relation between the United States and Afghanistan. And again, this is not an educational institute. It is purely a think tank with, its own independence. And we will be not only talking about the mainstream, actor, which is always state. I will be inviting the Taliban members, with of course, with in consultation of government, to talk and see their own how they perceive international relation, what is their perspective on the currents that are going on. So it will be a more diverse and a new platform that will be brought into the world. So I'm in the progress of contacting people, making networks and all those fundamental works. And I'm open to people who are interested in this initiative, to write for us or collaborate with us. And one of the potential collaborator or partner that we see is the Global Counterterrorism Institute. And student who might study this course, maybe get opportunity
Todd,
to intern. Yes, Jordan, we hear you.
Yes, we can hear you, Jordan.
Yeah. So if people are interested in Afghanistan, they can work, on issues like that.
Yeah, that would be interesting, even from the profiling view, to just get
Todd, can you hear me?
that type of information where you can actually see how they are thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Very fascinating.
Exactly. And I believe if the states are allowed to talk to them, if they are being invited to diplomatic talks. So I think, we as a non-governmental organization should also, give them opportunity, engage with them rather than completely avoiding them, to see what they want, what their perspective is. And that will be one of the area that, I will look into and consider in future.
Yeah, that would be extremely fascinating. I'd be very interested even in participating in that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely invite you to those panels.
Thanks. Yes, no, I'll look forward to that. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Irfan. All right, I'm going to bring up, introduce Mr. Jordan Olawunmi. Hello, Professor Jordan. Welcome.
Yeah, how are you, Todd?
I'm good, sir. How are you? And welcome to the open house. I'm going to stop sharing and get your slides. Did you want to talk individually about your course content, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to have the slide.
Which one?
Just to mention, Jordan, we thought you are not coming, and I briefly, summarize your presentation. So if you can maybe, explain it with more details, that will be great.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm here to put some light into what the course and the program is all about.
Go ahead. There you go. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Professor Kunle Olawunmi. I'm the main instructor for the International Security Study program. And today I'm going to actually throw some light onto what the theory and practice, of this vocation is all about. We have packaged this program in a way that our students should be able to understand the current dynamics, that situate the international security environment. Hitherto, we have issues that have to do with warfare among states. you can go back into history and look at what happened between the Greek and Sparta during the war that is actually termed the Peloponnesian Wars, you know. And when you look at the causes of some of these conflicts, you know, it has to do with national interests or economic interests, you know, as the case may be. A few of these instances, they are political. And as we go on, you know, we went to the Battle of Solferino. We went to the 100 Years' War, 80 Years' War, 30 Years' War, First World War. And the international system has been in turmoil up to the Second World War that was led by by Hitler, so to say. But these were in Europe. And the reasons are very clear, you know, it has to do with issue of coal and steel, issue of spaces, geography. And by the time we get to the Berlin Conference in 1887, you will see that the conflict has actually degenerated into what we call the fight for supremacy over, you know, distant lands that were in contentions. Africa, South America, Asia, you know, became contentious because of space and resources. But since the end of Cold War in 1990, what we have is actually different, you know, different in the sense that technology actually started to change, you know, the way we think. People started thinking about silent attacks, subtle attack, issue of cyber warfare came up. Now we've gotten to the point of artificial intelligence and proxy wars that we call war on terror itself. So what our students are going to benefit is the dynamics that are not found in Europe. Some of these dynamics, you know, are mostly found in Africa. You know, you see where Africans, Asians are beginning to get embroiled, you know, with conflicts that basically have nothing to do with it. Look at what is happening in Afghanistan, and that's why we have somebody like IFAN. Look at what is happening in Africa, Somalia, the Sahel, Nigeria, Namibia. And most of the students of international security studies are actually situated in Europe and North America and do not have a clear picture of what is happening in Africa. They do not have a clear picture of what is happening in the Middle East. And they do not have the clear picture of what is happening in the Far East, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Philippines, and even in China, some areas in China, Tibet, and other areas that are under siege, you know. And the Global Counterterrorism Institute has decided to come up with this program to actually quiet the noise around what hitherto is understood to be counterterrorism and war on terror. If you look at the axis of the evil, you know, from Afghanistan to Iraq, Iran, Libya, Syria, now to Nigeria, you see that there is a particular pattern. So we are beginning to look at war on terror from a different perspective: economic, political, surrounded by ideological reasons. It's like when you're talking about deception in intelligence, and you say that deception actually means truth surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. So also, when you look at the issue of counterterrorism today, you see economic, political, surrounded by ideological warfare. And fighting this kind of surge require a fundamental education, the background to some of the studies, the theories, the concepts. And this is what we are going to bring to bear. Todd, can I have the second slide, please? So this is the objective of the program. We need to understand the evaluation of security. So this program is going to cover the theory and practice. There are so many theories that situate, security itself. There are many authors, ideas, especially in North America, that actually give us what we should see as security. I mean, it's seen generally in terms of safety and welfare, especially when the issue of trepidation or fear is removed from a society. And one is cognitive, and the other one has to do with perception. Because if you talk about the hard aspect of it, in other words, you look at the cognitive aspect of security, we are talking in terms of warfare. So freedom from fear has to do with the inner feeling, a perception of safety. So these are the areas in the theory that we will bring out to actually distinguish the difference when we are defining the theory and practice of security. And we are going to also look at the key approaches in international security. In southern part of Nigeria, for example, the people we actually refer to as militants, that we refer to as insurgents, they see themselves as people fighting for their resources. And from another climb, we can look at them as terrorists. So we're going to look at the key approaches in international security studies. And we're going to be able to conceptualize some of the abstract issues that relate to security. But most importantly for our students, we intend to drill them on basic research skills. And that is why the GCTI has come up with 0 exams, and we just want to ensure that the students have the basic research skills to be able to do well in their next vocational, whatever they're looking for a job. Most importantly, we're going to actually address critical thinking. This is very important because in the era of social media hypes, where a lot of disinformation are out there, we're going to actually teach espionage, counter-espionage, subversion, and sabotage in a way that our students should be able to understand the Bible of intelligence circle. The intelligence circle is going to be treated in details to be able to stimulate the critical thinking of our students. Todd, can I have the next slide? In breaking down, these are the outlines. I'm sure I must have done justice to this, but I like to repeat that when we're looking at the critical security studies overview, we're going to look at the counter aspect of intelligence. In other words, counterintelligence. What do you do when you have critical security issues? Like, for example, in the United States, recently, the water system and the transport system and some other vital social security, social infrastructure in the United States was attacked. How do we begin to situate this? Like in Harvard, one of the things that we discuss is who should be, for example, in charge of the cyber defense in the United States. Is it the Department of State? Is it the Homeland Security? Is it the DIA? Or is it the Treasury Department, for example? So we are going to discuss this depending on the countries, and let students understand why the issue of cyber warfare has become a challenge in some of our states. And we are now going to look at wars, old and new. That's RMA, that's revolutionary in military affairs. We're going to look at network-centric warfare, because no matter what we do, even though warfare has changed tremendously over the past 2 decades now, but our students should be able to understand what is network-centric warfare. How do we differentiate this from space warfare that is brewing now, the information warfare, and the old concept of warfare, which is like what we call war of attrition. How do we differentiate this when we see a proxy war occurring in a particular region or state, and the reason why some of these proxy wars are being fought? Could it be, for example, we're going to distinguish different states like Syria, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, and let them understand some of the fundamentals, the reason why these wars are going on. Because people feel that those are trouble areas, and the only way to go about it is to look at the United Nations Security Council. But when you find out deeply in the course of our program, you discover that most of the members of P5+1 are actually culpable in some of these things. And you're beginning to really think deep critically why some of these international security environments are in turmoil. We're also going to look at the technology in counterterrorism. We mentioned drones. I think they're becoming really very useful. Artificial intelligence. We're going to look at issue of SIGINT, ELINT, humans. We cannot throw away humans. And in particular, we're going to look at the concept of geospatial intelligence. I mean, how does the space and high-tech equipment becoming useful in tracking terrorists, for example, or tracking the movement of terrorism financing, for example. So when you talk about technology and counterterrorism, it's not just the hardware. We're going to look at the soft aspect of it as well. We're going to just touch on peace building and peacekeeping. I will give example of the what we saw in Kosovo, whether it is peacekeeping or peacemaking or peace enforcement. We will also leave the ECOWAS, where I think for the first time in the history of the world, we experience peace enforcement, where some of the countries in West Africa decided to come together and enter into Liberia and actually enforce peace there and install, a democratic government. Some of these examples we're going to look at. We're going to look at the activity of the United States and in Kosovo as well, whether it's justiciable or it's justifiable, and what does the law, international law says about such intervention, whether it is right to intervene in the domestic affairs of another state by force or allow the state to degenerate into a state where there's anarchy and there's a lot of refugee crisis. So we're going to look at the balance, whether it is actually right for another state to intervene militarily in the affairs, internal affairs of another state, because the concept of sovereignty is still there. And the issue of nation states and their powers, they're also there. And when you look at the United Nations Conventions, Article 4, Article 7, there's very little provision for peace enforcement in some of these states. So we're going to look at that. Again, we're going to look at the issue of energy and resource security. I mean, this is one of the things I've mentioned earlier, where we're going to look at the issue of opium, oil, drugs, and resources, how they actually stimulate and provoke some of these crises that we have seen. So we're going to look at energy and resource security, business and security, including the issue of small arms proliferation, defense and armed trade, private military, like what you see in Iraq, and South Africa, where some of this private military became very useful during the conflict. And we're going to look at also the position of security companies, the multinationals. I mean, they create fantastic jobs overseas. We need to look at the balance between insecurity, global insecurity, and business. So these are some of the things we're going to bring to our students. We're going to look at the issue of the power of practitioners. I mean, how does a P5, how far have they done since 1945? Do they require us to expand the UN Security Council, or are they doing well? If they're doing well, why is international security environment becoming more volatile? So we're going to look at this again. Then we look at different states, nations, regions, where issue of border, on governed spaces, how they have actually also encouraged some of the things you see in Nigeria, in Niger, in Mali, Burkina Faso. When you look at the northern Mali, the state of Azawad, how has issue of border and mobility contribute to international security system or regional insecurity? Because when you look at the Zagreb region, where you have the ISIL now and ISWAP and Boko Haram, how has their culture, their way of life influenced some of the things that is going on? Because just like the Bedouins in northern Israel, they move across between Lebanon, even from Iraq, Iran, to Syria, and even in Israel and across to Lebanon. Their way of life, their culture, they don't believe in borders. So we're going to look at the risk, borders, and mobility and see what the international system is supposed to do, where some people believe that there's no border, there's no country, and they can move across and move as they like. This is what we are having in the northern part of Africa, the Zagreb region, where people are moving from Sudan to Chad, to Niger, Burkina Faso, and they are moving up to Mali, to the Futajalon Island, because they've been doing this over the millennia. For millions of years, they've been having this movement until the Berlin Conference in 1884, 1887, where now some of these African states were balkanized, and even including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so on, where border has become a cause of worry and the stimulant that has actually bedeviled the international system. Finally, we look at cyber warfare and cyber security. I've mentioned, we're not going to look at this topic the way we've seen other institutions, handling this. And I will say this with a lot of, I don't want to sound arrogant, but the Global Counterterrorism Institute is not going to look at cyber warfare in the areas where the Homeland Security, the FBI, the CIF, MI5, and so on are already monitoring. As I'm talking here now, they're monitoring my speech. So we are not going to look at that. We are going to look at the big picture of cyber warfare and cyber security. How do they affect defense? Look at what the Chinese are doing. They've copied everything the Americans are doing. We're going to look at how this can affect the water supply in the United States, for example, or the transport system in the United States. We're going to look at how cyber warfare can get to a point whereby issue of human rights, where people's privacy or rights are no longer, sacrosanct. How does it affect issue of international humanitarian law? And how is it going to affect international human rights law, where people now can listen to you and watch you in your privacy and so on? So we're going to look at cyber warfare and cyber security, particularly why nations are failing. I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons why nations have been failing is because they don't even understand this war. And they have failed to domicile the control, the command and control of cyber warfare at the right place. And this is even worrying because the United States of America is not even sure right now who should be in charge of the cyber defense. There's just so much proliferation of different defense, tactical defense structures everywhere, to the point that the United States don't even know who should be in charge of cyber warfare or cyber defense in the United States. How much more in Europe, how much more in Asia, how much more even in Russia. You see the KGB, the GRU trying to manage cybersecurity, and at the same time, you see private individuals are doing even the state. So there's a need to quiet the noise and structure this aspect of warfare in a way that it will not become what we have, where every Dick and Harry can actually do whatever they like and put states in jeopardy. Next slide, Todd. Okay. We also, in international security studies, we really don't believe too much in written exams because it has shown that exam sometimes is not the best way to actually judge somebody's focus and concentration. So we're going to have 0 written exams. We're going to have 0 practical exams, but we're going to focus on coursework. This is very exemplary, and this is very significant because we're going to actually make our students to do their research. And this is where we're going to assess them. We make sure that within the short period of this program, students, we actually do about 1,500 words to about 2,000 words mini research. We're going to tell them the structure. I don't know whether Todd will allow me to give away the structure that we have designed here. Todd, are you there?
Yes, I am here, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, I don't know the audience we have, but I think we are just 5. So I can mention it. I don't think we have too many of the students. We are going to look at the structures because we are particular about a design that has been perfected by the National Defense College in Nigeria, where the students are expected to learn how to structure their thoughts. So we're going to focus more on this with a view to making the students to make cogent recommendations from their strategies, because we're going to look at their implementation strategies. How do you expect some of the strategies you're going to prepare? But we're going to do that during the course of the program. And we're also going to make them to write about 3,000 to 5,000 words of another research paper, where they're going to actually treat some thematics that are going to be very useful for the international community and for GCTI to have in their archives. I think at this point, I think our time is well spent. I'm going to stop here and hand over to Ifan. Do you have something to say?
Well, not anything in particular. Yeah, you mentioned most of the thing that I left. So I think I'm good until if there is any question.
Okay. At this point, let me just hand over back to the
Todd.
CEO, Todd. Over to you, Todd.
So yeah, with that, I'm actually the director of admissions now. And so the next part of this to finish out is the admissions process and enrollment. The admission process is open. If you go to our community, the admission application is there. You can download it. It's a very simple essay. It's not a test. It's not a quiz. It's just for us to get to know you a little bit and to see your writing. And with that, I don't think, unless there are questions from the audience, I know we had a couple people join.
Do we, Todd, do we have an assessment done for every student just to test their English? Do we have something in place for that?
So we developed our groups for a reason. There are some students from other nationalities that don't speak English well. And so we have an English as a second language program to help with comprehension, to help with writing. And we're here to help. That's basically why we're here. And then if there is, there is the IELTS or IELTS. There are some test scores we want to look at to make sure that the comprehension level for the material is there. For the average person that's in this field already, whether it be a police officer, law enforcement, first responder, government official, diplomat, military, maybe they'll have some understanding of some of the material. And so we've structured it so that we can get them all through the basic understanding with the curriculum that we have developed. And that just leads them to be able to understand the material more and then go, to a different pathway if they wish. One of the things I think is important is that both of these programs, the criminal justice investigation and the international security studies, the emphasis is on counterterrorism. I mean, within international security studies, there's a military element that is somewhat theory-based, but between both, there's practical case studies that they'll be looking at, even geographically, regionally. And so for us, we decided to use both of the emphasis, the criminal justice and the international security studies combined at the higher level, at a graduate level. And that is our new Master's in International Security Study. It's called the MISS degree, MISS, which we are copyrighting. And so with that, there's other ways, other pathways to go, but we've settled on these two emphasis concepts because they are the two most important things in getting students grounded in this field. Counterterrorism it encompasses a lot of different contents. There's so many different directions you can go, but to have the foundation and the education, we've developed both of these programs. And if you want to go further, you can get some more computer technology degree, diploma information, or a foreign language. If you're already a foreign language speaking student and you want to learn English, well, there's the opposite, so that we can open this up to a global community. And so with our program, our passion is education, right? We know, and it's been stated several times, several quotes, with guns, you can kill terrorists. Yep, there's a lot of hard power out there throughout the world. But we know that education is what kills terrorism, the ism, right? Extremism, violence. And so with that, GCTI that's why we're here. So is there any other questions? And that's on anything that we've covered so far, the programs. I know some people have dropped, but we're recording this because we know we have a large community that couldn't make it. And so we'll be posting this video soon, as soon as the editing is done, to our community.